panelists are Brahmanand Singh, who is founder, chairman, and CEO, Mobius Films and Mobius Biopics Private Limited. Mr. Singh is an award-winning and well-recognized filmmaker, a vastly published author, and life coach. Second panelist is Kirit Khurana, who is a storyteller and director, Climb Media Films. Kirit has won 6 President's National Awards and 16 awards for his cinematic works. I welcome all of them on stage.
It's a pleasure to welcome all of you again after the lunch. It was unfortunate that we had to cancel the session before this due to this huge traffic problem which our speakers got stuck. So anyway, without taking much of your time, I would like to kickstart the session and look at kickstarting the Indian documentary. I would like to start with Mr. Brahmanand Singh. Tell us about your journey into the world of documentary filmmaking. What motivated you to start looking at Indian documentary as a genre of content?
I guess it was a wish to express what you feel, what you see around, what you interpret, and share it with people. I think the same thing that makes us make feature films or write books or write a newspaper article. So, and this was a genre or a form which is of a certain kind, and that's the only difference that I feel. So, essentially, to express yourself, it's a very powerful genre. It's a very powerful way. And you don't have to necessarily wait for the huge paraphernalia that a feature film entails. So I think that is probably behind many people taking it up, initially, and then maybe they get so fond of it that they continue with it. Though, I mean, people like Kirit, people like me, we do make feature films, but at the same time, documentary remains an exciting form. So, in short.
Interesting. Kirit, you come from the era, and your father also came from the era when documentary as a genre was, tackled in feature films. You had a short documentary being played in those days. And you having started your journey in the animation industry, then what made you also explore documentary as a genre?
So first and foremost, I consider myself as a storyteller, and I'm a genre agnostic storyteller. So when I see a subject, I don't look at it, I'm an animation filmmaker, therefore I should be doing an animation, or I'm a live action filmmaker, and then I should be doing only live action. I look at the subject independently, and I then ascertain what would be the best way to convey this idea, right? What would be the best format to convey this idea? And as Brahma pointed out, and Brahma, by the way, has made some wonderful films. You may have seen Pancham, the documentary which won the National Award, and subsequently made a film on Jagjit Singh as well, so I'm a great fan of his work. So the idea is that when you're making documentary films, like Brahma said, there is no need for a huge paraphernalia. I just came back from shooting a documentary in Raipur. I was there yesterday for a week. And we are a crew of 6 or 7 people, that's all. And we don't need a huge tamasha, tamjham. Most of the time you're just fighting logistics and, fighting other things, and the lightmen and your camera and your grips and your everything. I'm not saying that is redundant or whatever, but it requires a huge amount of budget. Here's something that if you have a calling, you want to convey certain ideas, whether it's a biopic, whether it's a biography, whether it is a specific social issue, documentary naturally lends itself to that space. Of course, Pancham is about R.D. Burman, and Jagjit Singh, of course, the famous ghazal singer. So similarly, I made a film on Saeed Mirza. He's a very, very renowned filmmaker who made even a series called Nukkad that you may be aware of. Of course, he made Salim Langre Pe Matro, Mohan Joshi, Haziru, and many, many iconic films. And I was surprised that Saeed Mirza did not have any documentary on him. And it is important to capture his life for posterity. He was getting old, he was 75 when I shot him. And so that was one. Then, of course, last year I finished a documentary on the homeless of India. And we shot across India for 52 days. And it's called The Invisible Visible. Now, The Invisible Visible, there are 70 million homeless people in this country, and the population of France is 67 million people. So we have actually got more homeless people on the streets, and there is not a single documentary that captures the problems and the sordid conditions of these people. Now that can only be done through documentary, because you're stating facts and figures and you're talking about their lives and you're capturing their lives and their emotions, and they are as real as you and me, these people, just that they are a creature of the circumstances or whatever. They're underserved, underprivileged, denotified, stateless people. And the only way you can capture that essence is through documentaries. So I think the subject matter itself automatically lends itself to what you're trying to do.
Okay, coming to a critical aspect of funding, Brahma, I would like to understand from you, how were you able to secure funding for your documentary films, and how were you able to monetize that in the early days?
So I'll want to come to that a little later. I'm very excited with this term, kickstarting Indian documentary. So, I mean, there's no need to kickstart. It's already there. But probably there's no better time for documentary makers than today, with all kinds of OTTs around, including some exclusive OTTs like DocuBay and all. Indian documentaries getting recognized, like Elephant Whisperer and all, at the highest level. And all kinds of corporates, foundations, philanthropic organizations, depending, of course, on the subject, around to be tapped. I mean, there was no better time if you compare it with 10 years back, 20 years back, as we are today. However, why is it still so difficult to get funds for documentaries? And it is. Okay, so 2-3 quick ones, and before I pass it on to both of you, is that I feel that what comes in way is probably 3 factors. One is that whereas everyone who has access to camera or phone thinks that we can start making documentaries. So whereas it's a great position to be in again, in terms of the democratization of the art. But at the same time, there is a certain art form, there's a certain approach, there's a certain storytelling ability, there's a certain aesthetics which you need to understand, master, depending on what the subject is. And mostly that goes missing. So for those who are able to do it, they are able to make very good films. Those who are not able to, they are probably among the 8,000 which never gets seen or recognized. So I think there needs to be more emphasis on the subject, how you treat it. Second part, I feel, is that compared to a feature film, okay, no matter whether it's a feature film budgeted at 1 crore or 10 crore or 200 crores, show me a single feature film which gets made and the filmmaker or the producer sits home thinking that someone will approach them and it'll get shown. You have to spend money on, on publicity and making people know that there is a film like this, come and see. Okay, The larger the budget, the larger the ad spends. So here we may not have ad spends as such, but there has to be some sensitivity that should come into play, and the film, the documentary that is made gets reached out to people. So coming back now to the funds, I feel for me and for everyone, I think it's the same way. There's one line from Steve Jobs which I quite liked, which he said that there's one differentiating factor between people who do and people who keep thinking is the ability to pick up a phone call. Pick up a phone, make a call, write an email, meet people. I think also because, very ironically, which Kirit can explain more, that for documentaries, there are no producers as such, other than today maybe an OTT, Netflix, Amazon, if it's at that level. But otherwise, by default, a director is also a producer. Okay, unlike a feature film where 70-80% of the time there is a producer and director who's different. And only the seasoned ones are both producers and directors. But here, by default, everyone is a seasoned one. Everyone has to be a producer. Everyone has to be an entrepreneur. So I think identifying a subject which is really, really powerful, like Kirit mentioned, I think the subject is very, very important. Okay, it has to really hit you, it has to trouble you, it has to fascinate you, it has to appeal to you. You should live with it, with whatever point of time, or get deep into it enough to make 3 months look like 4 years, you know. And then you need to find out ways, have a complete clarity as far as how do you want to go about it, how long could it be. The script develops more or less on the edit table, you know, but for some it can be pre-shoot also. But even if it is not, you must have a very good idea about the end point of it, or how you want to go about do it, mostly. I would make exceptions for 10% of them, but 90%, 80%, there are ways to identify that, because that helps you understand how much you need to make it. Once you have that and you have a concrete idea, you can go ahead and get money from various sources. It's not a secret, but meet me outside, I'll tell you, you know, if you have an idea, I'll tell you where to get money from. It's not easy either. Okay, it's not easy. You have to make an effort, but you can get money. Okay, it's not impossible to get money. All right. So I think I'll pass it on and I'll extend it.
So I completely agree, and I completely concur with what Brahmanand said and what Steve Jobs said. Like, the only difference between the people who think and they are doing it is the one that they pick up the phone. So I never picked up the phone, but I still made the documentaries. And largely because whenever I picked up the phone, I saw myself spending a lot more time trying to reach out to people and trying to convince that, you know, there is a film on the homeless that needs to be made. And people said, no, you cannot make a film on the homeless. Nobody's going to buy it. I said, that's not the point. The point is the subject is important. It's a story that needs to be told. And I found no buyers for it, so I never really picked up the phone for too long, because I understood that's kind of, if I'm going to spend 6 months of my life trying to get funding, that's not something that I want to do. Similarly with Saeed Mirza documentary also, and the other documentaries that I made, I knew right from the beginning that, oh, Saeed Mirza, oh, he's a dinosaur, oh, he's gone and he's no longer making films, why the hell are you making a film on him? I said he was one of the pioneers and one of the pillars of the parallel cinema movement in the 70s and 80s, but people don't want to hear his story for some reason. And of course, now the film is out and it was on Netflix and it was number 4 on Netflix, so it did very, very well for itself. Having said that, nobody was willing to put money in the beginning itself. So luckily for me, the reason why I didn't have to pick up the phone and I could make it myself was because I also have an advertising business that runs on the side, and I cross-subsidize. I take the money from the advertising, so advertising serves as a means to an end for me, that I want to tell these stories, and I then work harder on the advertising front. It's a longer process, but equally long is trying to find funds. And of course, when you're making ad films, you're busy because you're still doing what you love, which is filmmaking. So for me, that cross-subsidizing of business is something that I've been doing. That's my model. Then I don't care about whether it sells or it doesn't sell. Of course, I've been trying to sell it, but the objective of the film, the impact of the film is met. I'm fine with it.
I've always been fascinated by filmmakers on how they choose the subject of the documentary. How does that come about?
So that will always depend on the subject. But so there are 2-3 kinds of documentaries that come to mind directly. Most popular genres, within docu. One is cause-based. Again, funds are relatively easy to find for cause-based because someone or the other will feel like backing it at some point of time. The problem comes with artistic documentaries, I feel, where the way you treat the subject, the way you unfold things, the way camera is used, the way sound design is used, the way music is used is at par or maybe sometimes even better than most of the so-called feature narratives. But nobody sees a value of that. So, and it costs a lot, compared to other kinds. So I think one has to make that extra effort to get the funds and all. But having said that, coming back to creative and how you treat it, it's entirely a filmmaker's style, on which anything that works and is consistent throughout, to me, is a style. Madhur Bhandarkar, choice of his subjects, you like his film, don't like his film, but I respect because he's making his kind of films, he's not trying to copy someone, he's not trying to cut paste this also and that also and that also, So I think to discover your voice, discover your style, and sometimes it can take time, but it can happen right from your first film. You need to understand who you are. It sounds a little mystic, a little spiritual, but I think none of the art forms really work unless you understand why you are making it, who you are, what's troubling you, what's fascinating you. So I think how you should treat, you have to do your own homework 10 times, having seen good films, great films, maybe none, but you have an idea. You can be a Shikhar Kapoor who never made a film, but he made his first film and it was, you could see this stamp. You could be, I forget his first name, but some Gandhi who made... Yes, Anand Gandhi. You could see an auteur's stamp on his film. I'm talking about feature, but the same thing for documentary also. I think how you want to treat it, how you want to design it, how you want to plan it out. So I would say, it's a huge subject to go into, but in short, it depends a lot on the subject and on your personal orientation and how you respond to that subject in order to express.
So for me, I think kind of similar to you, because I think the two most prominent documentaries you've made are on towering people. For me also, it has been trying to find the right protagonist first. Yes. Even if it's an issue-based film, I try to find a protagonist or an anchor who can take me through the whole process, or he can explain to me the whole issues. For Saeed Mirza, of course, we're talking about the author himself, so it was a biography or a biopic, whatever you call it. and that was fine. But for the homeless, I found this wonderful guy called Tariq Muhammad. Now, Tariq Muhammad's story is quite extraordinary because he was in Hindu college, and he was a topper in his school, and he was a head boy. Wanted to be IAS, and he was tipped to be the IAS. And one night during a New Year's evening, he went to the instead of doing the party and all that. New Year's Eve, people usually go out and do parties. He gathered a bunch of friends and he took them out, and he carried some food packets and he gave it to the homeless people outside. He just wanted to kind of make it more generous. And while he was distributing the packets, while this Tariq guy was distributing the packets, right, and he had no intentions of being, in this social sector or serving people or whatever, he distributed packets and they were just chilling and they were just talking amongst each other. One beggar came up to him and he had tears in his eyes. Well, actually not a beggar, he was a person who was on the streets, a homeless person on the streets, and he said, and he had tears in his eyes, and he told him, "I'm sorry." So Tariq asked him, "Why are you sorry?" He said, "I'm sorry because I had more than my share. I stood in the line twice, and therefore I had 2 more samosas than what I was supposed to have. I had 4 samosas instead of 2 because I am a daily wage worker and I have not eaten for 3 days because I didn't get work." Now, the poor man's conscience moved Tariq so much that he was moved to tears that, there are people who are blatantly looting and blatantly stealing and doing whatever, and they can go to jail also, and they don't seem to be having any kind of conscience or any shame to do whatever hell they want to. They trample over other dead bodies and they build their castles on that. And here's a conscience of a poor man on the street who came up to him and said that he had more food than his share. So that is when Tariq actually immediately left Hindu college and he joined TIS, which is Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and he took up a project in the beggar's home and he started working with the homeless. This was when he was 17 years old. Now his journey was so extraordinary after that, and when he was telling his stories, I was moved to tears. And every time he spoke, every time he narrated incidents, and he narrated thousands of them, it was so genuine and so heartfelt, and he was so deeply empathetic that I felt this is the guy who's actually the messiah for the homeless. And of course, he's a very, very educated, erudite man, but he works with the homeless on the street, and yet he's also appointed by the Supreme Court to set up shelters across India. And he's also, as part of the advocacy, he's also reframing laws that are more sensitive towards the homeless. Now, when I heard all this, it became very apparent to me that this is a story that needs to be told, and here's a man who knows everything right from the ground, who has worked with the poor and the homeless on the streets, right up to the powers and the ministers and the lawmakers and the judiciary. He knows everybody. And that was a tipping point for me to choose, to make the invisible visible. It is just this extraordinary journey of this guy, and he was disowned by the family because he comes from an incredibly wealthy family, but lives in a 1 BHK here, rented 1 BHK in Sanpada someplace, 15,000-20,000 bucks rent. He's willing to give up everything. He doesn't care. And his family had ostracized him, they had excommunicated him. And he was still, and he used to go hungry and sleep on the platforms and whatever for many, many days and months, just so that he could experience what it means to be a homeless person in this country. That was a penny dropping moment for me. I said, this is a film that needs to be done.
I can see the passion in your eyes when you
Amazing.
narrated that subject. I would now like to throw the floor to the audience, so we make it a very interactive session. Any questions from the audience for the panelists? See, can we have a mic here, please?
My question is to the gentleman here to my left. You said you start with an idea, you develop a deep passion for it, and you try to see the end of the idea. See, I've done a little bit of writing of books, and what I find that while you have a germ of an idea in your mind, it's constantly a process of reshaping, evolving, reshaping, and then the end may sometimes not even resemble the starting point of your journey. That is true of most creative work. But in a documentary, you have to hit the nail on that head every time, like this thing of slum children, or slum dwellers. So Please enlighten me, because it's a process of creative writing. You could share that knowledge with all of us. Thank you.
I would say it's not very different. It's very similar. Even when you make films, you start off at some point, and it's also a learning and exploration for you. You yourself don't know many things that you are making, that you get wizened up by, and it's a very similar process. I find you don't know what you will end up getting. You may plan out in a documentary, and that is why it's called unscripted, even by Netflix and others. It's very interesting to know that they have used the term called unscripted, because you can't script everything in a docu, because you don't know what you will be getting. You might be getting 10 things more than what you have set out for, and you might not be getting 4 things that you have actually planned, and it doesn't work. So I think what I meant by starting off with an idea, anything starts with an idea, but after that, you have to discover your sync with the subject. You have to discover your passion for the subject, and you have to live it. And like I said, you can live with a subject for 6 years, and you can live with a subject for 4 months, and it may look like you have lived with it for 5 years. You know, it has to be that intense, that passionate. The more intense, the more passionate, the more 24/7 thinking you are about the subject, the more it works, the more it acquires a body, you know, and the more it starts talking to you. So the moment it starts having conversation with you, rather than just you having conversation with it, you know, you talking to the thing, that's a good sign. That's exactly what happens in writing, where your characters start talking to you, you know, where your characters go in a certain way. They have their own minds, and you are just a means to, you know, give words to the thoughts that it's not you, it's your characters who are thinking. So I think it's very similar, but it's very important to have that involvement. Which is why you'll find that commission films are very different, mostly, from films that you have set out to make. You know, you are still a skilled professional, you're a great filmmaker, you will do a very good job, you know, but there's something missing, and that's a very it's a very difficult thing to define.
I think I'll call it the nucleus of your idea, of the whole project.
Nucleus to isme bhi rahega, but I think is that extra thing which only passion, involvement, and you know, thinking through creates in a certain way. That's how I would put it.
Okay, one question at the back, this side.
Hi. Hello. I just want to know something about documentaries. Well, when we used to see documentaries, I mean, maybe 10 years or 15 years before, maybe, I can't say the boring thing, but it was like, you know, come on here, I have to see the documentary. It's more time consuming or something like that. Nowadays, when I see documentaries, I think, is there any liberty you're taking? Now the documentaries are well paced. I think the BGM and that thing comes, maybe I can say the climax sometimes. So is it like you have adapted some kind of fiction into it at any point? Because people want to know the climax, maybe what happened to this. For example, if something is happening on anything, for example, homeless guys, what happened to him finally? So is there some kind of a liberty you're taking now? The screenplay is more fast, or that you're maybe missing those essence. You want to catch the audience also. Has off the course this documentary making change with and is it helping?
Yeah, so I think one is that people's patience has worn out, because all of us are very distracted. If the frame doesn't move for more than 10 or 15 seconds, and your shot is more or less static for 10 or 15 seconds, people will immediately reach out to their phones and start, surfing, or they will just change the channel and watch something else. So one is to do with the fact that we have become very impatient overall. I think the pace of the documentaries earlier was very, very idyllic in many cases. I wouldn't say in all cases. The second thing that I see is when Brahma talked about the fact that there is a lot of opportunities now for unscripted content, which is you have DocuBay and you have Discovery and you have many other things. But in that, what I feel here is that there's a limitation because they are just moving in the bandwidth of trying to sensationalize, or they're trying to make something that is dramatic, or they'll take some crime story, Mumbai crimes or some underworld story, and they will make a docu-series on that, or they will find some sex sleaze thing, or they'll pick up Bollywood or something. So something that is more appealing to the regular audience. So it is actually Bollywood wrapped up in that format or the genre. Yes. It is not pure documentary in that sense. It's not a more purist approach, which is why documentary filmmakers like us find it more difficult to find funding because we are more purist in our approach. It's not a commercially driven approach. But there are many, many commercial driven things. So the formatting for that is very simple, which is the formatting for a feature film, which is create an inciting incident, create the drama, the rising drama, and then create a crisis, and then create a down point, and then a climax and a resolution, which is the typical format, archetypal format that you have for any of the live action films. So the edit pattern follows that. And if the actual story is not following that, then the edit pattern actually follows that. So they may go non-linear then. So that's the advantage of having a documentary. So yeah, I mean, that's really what is happening right now. It is a commercial documentary space is more like a feature film wrapped up in a different genre or a format.
Wrapped up in in that clothing, yes. And I think what you're talking about boils down to what Kirit nailed in his first opening lines, that it all boils down to storytelling. So you have poor storytelling even today, you had poor storytelling even in the past, you had great storytelling sometimes back then, and you have it now also. I think why documentary got a bad name is because of probably real boring ones, because of Films Division and Doordarshan kind of things. Otherwise, documentary world over is a very, very thriving genre, and documentary does not at all mean boring. I have heard this line a million times because of the film that I made on R.D. Burman and Jagjit Singh, that not a single minute I'm not excited. And I think I boiled it down to one line that Salman Rushdie talks about writing, and about the 200 techniques of writing that they teach you at writers' workshops and schools, is that every page the reader should feel like turning to the next. As simple as that. If you have achieved that, whether you have learned the techniques or not does not matter. So in films, at least I follow that, and I'm sure like it's probably the simplest way to make good, interesting films, is that does every minute of your timeline earn itself? If it does not, edit it, drop it. And that brings me down to a very important aspect in filmmaking in general, and documentary filmmaking even more. The need of a great or a very good editor. Most people undermine it. Most people undermine the sound design in a documentary, but it's very important. So need for a good sound design, need for a good editor, need for a good camera person. Collaborate with the best. You are the driver, you are the mind. But you need strong arms, you need strong legs if you want to run a good race, right? You can't have a phenomenal mind and a very weak legs and aim to run a marathon. It's a composite thing. So I think a great need to get good editors and have them work on it.
Yeah, I would agree completely. In fact, sometimes I feel that editors are probably more powerful than directors in documentaries. So it is very, very important to get the right kind of editor.
So I'll
Yeah.
take one more last question
Hi.
before we
I
wind
wanted
up
to
the
ask a
session.
question.
Yeah.
This is open to the panel. When you go to a network like maybe DocuBay or Netflix or Amazon, are they looking at content which has already been produced, or do you have to go with your entire script and project and then hope to get it commissioned? Very quickly, for example, I made a documentary series called Green Solutions, which was commissioned by BBC Wales. Then I made something called Indique with an American producer, which we made out of our own pockets, and eventually it was picked up by PBS America. So I don't know how things work now here in India. Do you go with your entire script, director attached, DOP attached, and then you go to a streamer like a Netflix or a DocuBay and say, this is what I've got, and they'll say yes or no? Or do you sit with them and work out something which they want? Just trying to get a sense of how do one approach these streamers for documentaries,
So both ways. I think one is that you go with your ideas, but you do have to have the key crew attached to it. You do need to have a deck. You do need to have a strong log line, a very attractive idea. As I said, they are not purists. They are more interested in, is it engaging, is it entertaining, and to even a certain extent, they have their own internal ways of assessing whether this is going to give them more TRPs or whatever, more subscribers in the case of platforms. And they have their own internal assessments whether the subject, so the subjects that most of them are looking for, and that hasn't changed for the last 2-3 years, is drama, high drama, which is if there is Mumbai underworld stories or sex leads or something, or some scandal or some high profile. Now you see those that series come on Millionaires, which is
Bad Boy Billionaires.
Bad Boy Billionaires, right? So you see that everybody knows Malia and everybody knows Sahara Shri and everybody, you want to know their story. And, so it automatically becomes attractive and many people are watching it. See, at the end of the day, understand that the OTT is also a business. They want subscribers. And they are not interested in your passion, and they are not interested in your creativity and your artistic excellence. If they feel that this is not going to get them the subscribers, no matter how good your subject is and how relevant it is, like a subject like All That Breathes, which made it to the Oscars and was nominated for the Oscars, that subject would have never been commissioned over here. They got funding from overseas, from here and there, and they pulled something off on their own, and they got the funding. Now, of course, Jio has acquired it after that. But I'm sure even in that, they have not probably paid a big price, because they know that All That Breathes will be seen by only a few select 1,000, maybe 100,000 people. Most of the people haven't even heard about the film. Although it's a film extraordinary, but it is a film that takes its own pace to tell the story. It is not engaged. It is not cutting like this. Okay, let's keep people engaged. It is film mein ठहराव hai. It is a film that is lingering, and it has a beautiful subtext to the whole film, which is also about a socio-religious kind of a connotation in the bed. So there is a lot of other things that are happening that the OTTs will not even touch.
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about are the two kinds of ways in which you can make film. One is commissioning, one is acquisition. So acquisition falls into the category that you have put in money or gotten someone to put in money you've made, and then you reach out to them, would you take it? If they like it, they'll take it. They'll pay you an X amount, or they will share revenue. And two is where they will commission you if you go to them with an idea, or if they have an idea and you are a filmmaker they would want to work with, then I personally am not in great favor of OTT commissioned films, especially documentaries, for one reason, that although it's a great opportunity, I'm not at all dismissing that. I find that the life of a film stops once they have commissioned and once you have. There's no festivals, there's no freedom that you have or your producer has on the screening of those films. They will do what they want after you have delivered. So it's like a commissioned film that you do, a corporate commissioned film. Very similar. You have made a masterpiece, you have given it to them. After that, you have no idea whether they will keep it in their shelf or they will show it. In case of OTT, you know that it is there, available in 140 countries or 60 countries, and it's available. People will watch it. But again, how well they promote, they don't promote, will depend on their own marketing strategies and what they feel of the film and of you, and whether it's backed by stars. It all boils down to finally the same things that Bollywood was infamous for. OTT has become a big trap for something very, very similar. So though it's a great opportunity, I feel that there are other ways to fund a film and make it and take it to the world and places. And you should retain the copyrights, you or your producer. So the scope remains endlessly open. Otherwise you're done. You get your money, you make your 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever, and you move on to the next. That's like doing a job. You're not owning it. Like I made a film on R.D. Burman 15 years back, it's still paying me. Still paying me, and I had no idea at that point of time that it'll last so long. I've made about half a dozen feature-length films. One particular feature-length film, though good, very good, on travel, which I get to hear wherever I screen that, oh, this is the India that we live in. We didn't know. It's almost a 2-hour film, but I didn't have funds to promote it, so it didn't reach like the other 2 films. Compared to that, I made a feature film for which I spent almost P&A included 15 crores, and people don't know much about it. So it's not that documentaries are a bad, poor cousin, you can't promote it, you have to do everything, and it works phenomenally well, if done well.
So in a nutshell, we can say that interesting times are ahead for documentary filmmaking in India. So to that, we would like all of you all to give a huge round of applause to our speakers for this one fantastic session. And over to you, Shahnawaz.
Thank you, Brahmanand. Thank you, Kirit. And thank you, Manoj. I'd like to call on stage Kavita Sharma. She is Senior Director, Nuremberg Messe, to hand over the mementos to the panelists.